Arsenal won the game yesterday at Old Trafford, but is the criticism too far? Is the concern too much? Are Arsenal fans doing too much? Are neutrals doing too much to bash Arsenal in a game that they essentially won in the first game of the season with a new striker up front who needs to take time to get used to the league? Are they doing too much? Or is the performance too negative? This switch from Arsenal being on the front foot, flamboyant, entertaining football, to now, you know what I'm saying? They're saying that he's Arteta Pulis and all of this stuff. Has that shift been too much? And actually, both statements can be true. But when you win the first game of the season away at Old Trafford, which, historically for Arsenal is not the best, and their record is not the best there, and they've got aspirations of winning the league, you got to just take your 3 points and get out of there. The bigger problem is if the performances after this are still the same as that, and if you play like that against the likes of Liverpool, City, etc., the better teams in the leagues, you ain't getting 3 points. You're not getting 3 points. So I think it's an interesting one to talk about, and that's why I want to talk about it properly. Listen, the game yesterday from an Arsenal perspective, I think you have to break it down into subsections, right? Attacking wise, they were shocking. They were really, really poor. Man United did a really good job of nullifying Arsenal, of making sure that they didn't have it their own way. But you also have to look at the Arsenal performance. It wasn't all just Man United making Arsenal look poor. A lot of it was they have to look at themselves. I'm looking at the captain, Martin Odegaard, in transition. You are chief creator. You are the captain, especially when Tony Adams has, had a lot to say about you and his role as captain, and think, he should be going to Declan Rice. But a couple of times in transitions, 2 or 3 times in transitions, he was absolutely shocking. Overhitting the pass, underhitting the pass, making the wrong decision, just poor execution. Really, really poor execution from him. Saka was as quiet as I've seen him in a long time. Shout out to Luke Shaw and Dorgu for that. But from an Arsenal perspective, you look at Saka, he's the outlet. It's so loud out there. I'm just going to close this window. It's too loud. I don't know what's going on out there. I'm sorry. What's going on out there, man? Yeah, he just wasn't good enough. He wasn't good enough. And yes, there's props to Man United for that. But from an Arsenal perspective, you expect more from Bukayo Saka. Gabriel Martinelli, awful, shocking, not good enough. And that's the reason why, again, Arsenal fans who want to criticise the recruitment and say we need a left winger, that is why. Because he was awful. I look into midfield as well. I don't think Declan Rice had his best game. You know that he's a consistent performer, so you can't get onto him and say he ain't good enough this day. He just had a bad game. And Zubimendi probably didn't have the impact that everybody thought he was, including me. I thought he was going to be a massive problem and we wouldn't be able to see the ball, which that's not how it went. But defensively, so that's how you break it down. So the midfield and definitely attack, nowhere near good enough. Defensively, Arsenal were excellent, which, I believe Arsenal got the best defence in the league. They do statistically, and I think they do with the eye test. Gabriel and Saliba and Raya all did their jobs to the top level. Saliba a little bit lucky towards the end not to give away a penalty, but other than that, flawless. Bringing, maybe it wasn't the best to start Calafiori and Ben White, but Lewis Skelly and Timber coming on settled things down a little bit. So defensively, they were very good. But then you have to look at the manager. Then you have to look at this team shifting from this style of football where Arsenal seem a bit predictable now. The intensity seems to have gone. I'm not seeing Arsenal being on the front foot as much, which would be a worry. But it is one game. Now, if Arsenal play Leeds next week at the Emirates, and it looks the same, and Leeds are in the low block, and Arsenal can't break them down, and they look a bit lethargic, then yeah, I think there's cause for concern, because the next game after that is Liverpool away. Arsenal can't play like that against Liverpool away, even though you haven't lost to Liverpool away in the last couple of seasons. That was such a poor performance against Man United that you got to shake the cobwebs off. But I just think it's too early to just label Arsenal with, same old crap. Arteta's done this, he's done. It's one game, and ultimately it's a game that you've won. Like, we can't forget, Arsenal won that game. Did they deserve to? Probably not. They got gifted a goal by Man United's poor goalkeeping error, which happens all the time. But once they did go 1-0 up, what did they do? They made sure they didn't concede. All right, they might have conceded 22 shots with 7 on target, but ultimately, David Raya, what was the biggest save he made? I mean, he should make that save from Cunha. Sorry, from Mbeumo for the header in the second half. The fingertip save he got from Cunha across goal was a really good save. Dorgu hits the post, no chance. And then the rest of the shots, when Cunha ran past Declan Rice like he weren't there, and Zubimendi, I think it was, he shot straight at David Raya. It wasn't difficult, and a few shots went straight at David Raya. So I don't necessarily blame Arsenal for that, but I think the criticism is a little bit too far. But where I would step in and say is that I have noticed that Arsenal, they're not exciting to watch anymore. Something has changed. I don't know whether that pragmatism is deliberate by Mikel Arteta to say, I want us to be like this. He's speaking after the game saying, listen, if you want to win games, so if you want to win championships or you want to win Premier Leagues, etc., you have to win when you're not playing well. If we're keeping the same energy, look at Liverpool. They conceded 2 goals. And they were 2-0 up at home. Shocking display. Shocking display defensively, Liverpool. You know what I mean? So, but because they got the track record of getting it done, people aren't really homing in on that because there's an assumption that Liverpool will either keep doing that, which is outscore their opponents like they did last year, or they will improve. It's because Arsenal haven't got over the line in so long. If people see that type of performance from Arsenal, the narrative is different. And probably rightly so, because it's based on evidence, it's based on proof, right? Arsenal have proved that they've come second 3 times in a row. They're kind of nearly men. They can't quite get over the line. Then it's we need a striker, so you've gone and got him. You've replaced Partey with Zubimendi. That's an excellent signing. But you look at why Arsenal fans are still angry, because there's still work to do. Look at that left side. That is where I will criticise Arsenal. Look at that left side. And then you look at Madueke coming on as well. Absolutely shocking. Now, it is one game. You can't judge it. But the early signs I can understand why some Arsenal fans are like, we've spent 55 million on Madueke. He's about par with Martinelli at best. At best, but probably a little bit better. He comes on, gets absolutely skinned by Ahmad. Couple of weak clearances. Martinelli, a couple of poor switches of play. Couldn't get at his man. Trossard unused sub, I think. Like, you need a left winger. I don't necessarily think it should be Eze. I spoke about that already. I don't think it should be Eze. But you need a left winger. So, when Turkish and guys like that and a lot of the Arsenal fan base are talking about, go and get Leao or go and get Nico Williams or go and get, Rodrigo, etc., I can see why, because that left-hand side is a problem, and that I don't think is going to be enough to carry Arsenal to the Premier League title. And when I look at what City did against Wolves, okay, it's against a poor Wolves, but Reinders looks excellent. You look at Shirky, look at Ait-Nouri, and look at signings, that James Trafford looked fine, which he's a good goalkeeper. They look like they've got the bit between their teeth. But again, it's one game. They could go to play against Spurs and then it all goes to shit again. So, look, it's one game. Arsenal did win it. They've done their job, which is to win the first game of the season against Man United at a difficult ground to do it in. And Man United were actually very good and they still won. That, will be something that Arsenal can look back on in the season and say, when they're playing well and they're in their groove and they're winning games comfortably, you go, remember the first game of the season, we just collected 3 points at Old Trafford. So in the grand scheme of things, this is probably a non-story. But you can see some warning signs. You can see some warning signs of the things that Arteta needs to change and change quickly. Otherwise, I think they could fall behind the title race very, very quickly. But it's one game and they've won it. So let me know what you guys think. Are people doing too much? Or is all the criticism labelled at Arsenal and Mikel Arteta justified? Let me know. Take care. I'm out of here. Peace.